These words were banned in India under British colonial rule. The military government of Guatemala prohibited them in the 1980s. Argentina's ruling generals
I
during
have
the Dirty
never
War
felt anything
ordered them
this
removed from
smooth.
public spaces.
It is
They are not from a
cold,
revolutionary manifesto.
clean.
They are not from a political speech. They are not from a banned novel or an underground newspaper. They were spoken by a pregnant peasant woman, standing in someone else's kitchen, in a
I have
village
never
nobody had
seen a
heard of
place like this.
2,000 years ago.
It
And
is
governments
holy.
with armies are still afraid of them.
I am not.
This is the Magnificat, the longest recorded speech by any woman in the entire New Testament. And it is not what you think it is. We've turned this into a hymn. We sing it in cathedrals. We set it to Bach and Vivaldi and 1,000 choral arrangements. We print it on Christmas cards between pictures of snow and angels. But if you strip away 2,000 years of music and liturgy
His
and gold
name is
leaf,
John.
if you go back to the room where it was actually spoken, what you find is not a hymn. What you find is a
Something about a
bomb,
new
is
baby's
a...
tunic.
And the fuse
Yes,
was
and the
lit by a
weaving is so
woman
much
who had
finer
nothing.
now. It
No
truly
land,
is. He
no
will be
money,
so
no
warm
political
in it.
power, no army, no
The laughter
credentials,
from the
not even a
courtyard
room of her
fills
own.
the
She was standing in
silence.
someone else's house.
He listens.
Let's read what she actually said, Luke 1:46-55.
Oh, Elizabeth,
My
I
soul
have such
magnifies the
joyous
Lord, and my
news.
spirit rejoices
Tell
in
me
God my
everything,
Savior.
dear Mary. My heart
That's the
is
part
ready
everyone
to
knows, the
burst.
devotional part, the part that sounds like a prayer. Now here's the part that gets people arrested. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts
There,
of their
Mary,
hearts.
put your hand
He has
here.
brought down the powerful from
I
their
feel
thrones and
something.
lifted up the
He
lowly.
leaps.
He has
Yeah,
filled the
yes.
hungry with good
Oh,
things
blessed
and sent the
be.
rich away empty.
The baby leaped
Read that
in her
again,
womb.
slowly. Brought down the powerful
And I
from their
knew.
thrones in a region ruled by Rome, where the only thrones belonged to emperors
changes
and their
come in
client
stages.
kings,
There will be
where Herod
discomfort,
Antipas
Mary,
governed
but it
Galilee with
passes.
Roman
Thank you,
backing
Elizabeth.
and
I
Roman
understand.
soldiers, sent the
Remember,
rich away
this knowledge is
empty,
yours now.
in an economy where the rich were the landowning class that profited
Take your
from Roman
time.
trade networks,
Just breathe.
where peasant farmers, people like Mary, like
Thank
Joseph,
you.
like every family in Nazareth, were being crushed by taxation and debt. Lifted up the lowly. The lowly, that's her family, that's her village.
Fold it like
This
this,
isn't a
Mary.
prayer. This is
It
a woman
feels
standing
so
in a kitchen and
different.
announcing that
You
the
are
entire
doing it,
power
my
structure of
dear.
the known world is about to be
Gently
flipped
now.
upside
Like
down.
this?
Here's the question scholars have been fighting about for centuries. How did a peasant woman
I should be
compose
doing
this?
this.
The
Just
Magnificat
Just rest,
isn't
Elizabeth.
spontaneous rambling,
Thank
it's
you, Mary.
structured. It follows the form of a Hebrew Tara, a Thanksgiving psalm. It opens with personal praise, expands to God's actions in history, and closes with a reference to the covenant
Welcome,
with
my
Abraham.
dear.
That's
That
a literary
flower looks
form,
lovely.
a deliberate,
It is, Elizabeth.
recognizable
Much
poetic
better than
structure.
the barley
And the
back
text is
home.
saturated
Thank
with
you.
references to the Hebrew Bible.
Oh, I remember that feeling.
Scholars
It's
have
such a
identified
blessing.
echoes of at least
And
15
you've
Old
guided
Testament
me through
passages.
so much of it
The
already.
most obvious
I can't
parallel
wait.
is Hannah's song in
Oh,
1
I can't
Samuel,
believe it. Look at
chapter
that
2,
chicken.
another woman who praised God
Oh, I
after an
know, that's the
unexpected
one that
pregnancy.
got away with the bread.
But there are also
I needed
threads from
that.
Psalm
It's too
34,
perfect.
Psalm 98, Psalm 103,
The Lord
Isaiah
has done great
41,
things for me.
the Song of Miriam, and Exodus 15.
Blessed art
How did
thou
Mary know all
among
of this?
women.
She didn't read it. Women in first century rural Galilee didn't typically receive formal education. They didn't study Torah scrolls in a classroom. They heard it. Every Shabbat Torah was read aloud at the Nazareth synagogue. The Haftarah, a reading from the prophets, followed. Psalms were recited, prayers were chanted. Mary was present for all of it. She didn't read publicly. That role was reserved for men. But she sat and listened for over 2 decades. Over 20 years of hearing the same texts, the same rhythms, the same phrases. The words entered her through her ears. They settled into her memory the way the grinding stone's rhythm settled into her hands through thousands of hours of repetition absorbed so deeply that they became part of her. The Magnificat didn't come from a library, it came from a synagogue bench. From 2 decades of sitting and listening and absorbing until the words were so deeply embedded that when the moment
Don't worry,
came, they rose up in
Elizabeth. We're
patterns.
almost there.
She had heard since
Just a little
childhood,
further.
rearranged,
Thank you, Mary. I don't know
recombined,
what
and
I'd do
aimed at her
without
own
you.
situation with the precision of a woman who knew exactly what she was saying. And she did know. That's the part we need to talk about next, because this wasn't a woman singing pretty
feel that?
words. This was a woman
He's
who understood the
restless
political
today.
implications of every single
so
line.
Strong.
He has brought down
Just
the
like his
powerful
father.
from their thrones. Let's name the thrones. Caesar Augustus sat on one. Herod the Great, who had died only a few years before Mary's song, depending on the chronology, sat on another. His son Herod Antipas, who ruled Galilee during Mary's lifetime, sat on a third. The high priests of the temple, political appointees approved by
I wish
Rome,
I could stay with
occupied a
you.
4th tier of power.
I know,
Mary
my
knew these
dear.
names. Everyone in Galilee
safe on
knew
your
these
journey.
names. These were the men who taxed your grain, conscripted your labor,
God bless
and
you,
crucified your
Mary.
neighbors
Go
when they
in
resisted,
peace.
and sent the rich away
Thank
empty.
you, Elizabeth.
The rich in first century Galilee were not
Farewell.
abstract figures. They were the landowners
I
who
have
had acquired
always
peasant
believed
farms
you.
through debt foreclosure, a process
back
accelerated by Roman
and face
taxation.
it.
Families like Mary's worked
can.
land that their grandparents had owned. The rich were the people who now owned that
You have
land
been
and rented it back to
believed.
them. Mary wasn't making theological
has made all
observations.
the
She was describing
difference.
her own economic reality and
Something
declaring
about
that
a
it was
new
about to
baby's
end.
tunic.
And here's the detail
Yes,
that
and the
makes this
weaving is so much
extraordinary.
finer
She uses
now.
the
It
prophetic
truly
perfect
is. He will
tense.
be so warm
In
in
Hebrew
it.
poetry, the prophetic
The laughter
perfect
from the
describes
courtyard
future events
fills
as if
the
they have already
silence.
happened. Not he will bring down the
listens.
powerful, he has brought them down. Not he will fill the
Oh,
hungry,
Elizabeth, I
he
have
has
such
filled them.
joyous news.
The revolution isn't
Tell
coming,
me everything,
it's already
dear
here, the
Mary.
rest
My
of the world
heart
just
is ready
hasn't
to
caught up.
burst.
A peasant woman with nothing standing in someone else's kitchen, declaring in past tense that the entire order of the world has already been overturned. That's either delusion or
There,
the most
Mary. Put
extraordinary
your
act
hand
of
here.
faith in the ancient record.
I feel
This is not
something.
ancient history.
He
This is the
leaps.
20th century.
Yes.
Argentina,
Oh, blessed
1976
be.
to 1983.
The rest is yours.
The military junta, the dictatorship that disappeared an estimated 30,000 people. Mostly
May it
young
be
political
so.
activists faced one group of protesters. They could not
Go, my
silence the mothers
child,
of the Plaza de Mayo.
and may God be
These
with
women
you on
mothers,
your journey.
whose children had been kidnapped, tortured, and killed by the state, marched in the central square of Buenos Aires every Thursday afternoon, carrying photographs of their missing sons and daughters. They carried the Magnificat
Goodbye, my
on their
dear
banners.
friend. May
The
God
generals
be with
responded
you.
by banning the public display
Goodbye,
of the
Mary.
text,
Go in peace.
a song by a first-century peasant woman considered too dangerous for public display by a government with an army, a secret police, and the power to make people vanish. Guatemala, the military government banned the Magnificat during the Civil War of the 1980s. The Catholic Church had aligned with indigenous communities demanding land reform. Mary's words about lifting the lowly and filling the hungry were heard accurately as calls to revolution. British India, colonial administrators classified the Magnificat as seditious literature. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones was not comfortable language for a government that sat on the throne of the subcontinent. The same words, the same peasant woman, the same reaction from power across centuries, across continents, across political systems. These words are dangerous. Silence them, and they couldn't 2,000 years, and they still can't. Let's see her clearly. She owns nothing, not the house she's standing in, not the land it's built on, not the clothes on her back. They're patched and faded and covered in 5 days of road dust. She has no political power, no army, no title, no institutional backing. She is a peasant woman from a village so small it didn't appear on Roman maps. She has no audience. Elizabeth is the only person who can hear her. Zechariah is there, but he can't respond. He can't even say amen. And from this position, from the absolute bottom of every hierarchy that her world recognizes, she opens her mouth and declares that every one of those hierarchies is about to collapse. The proud scattered, the powerful dethroned, the rich emptied, the hungry filled, the lowly lifted. She doesn't ask for it. She doesn't hope for it. She announces it as already accomplished, past tense, done. That gap between who she is and what she says is the thing that has made governments afraid for 20 centuries. Because if this woman can say these words, if a person with nothing can stand in a borrowed kitchen and announce the end of the world as it is, then the world as it is has a problem. And the world as it is has been trying to solve that problem ever since. By putting the words in cathedrals, by setting them to organ music, by printing them on Christmas cards, by making them beautiful and safe and devotional, because the alternative is hearing what she actually said. And what she actually said is that the thrones are already empty and the hungry are already fed and the revolution is already over.
God, why must it
The
be
rest of
so
the world just hasn't
difficult?
noticed
There is
yet.
no meaning.
We call it a hymn, we sing it in
Perhaps there is
churches, we
meaning
frame
I have
it and
not
hang
yet
it on
grasped.
walls. But
I
read
feel the ache
the
in my
actual
shoulders
words,
already.
really read them,
The
and you
day
won't find a
stretches
hymn.
out long.
You'll find a declaration of
Look,
war,
the first star.
delivered by a woman
It's
who had nothing
beautiful, isn't
except the
it?
unshakable
I have
conviction
traveled
that nothing
far,
was enough.
Elizabeth.
She was poor, she was pregnant, she was in trouble. She was standing
God
in
has
someone
brought
else's
you
house
safely,
wearing someone
Mary.
else's charity, carrying a child that her village thought was a scandal. And she opened her mouth and sang about thrones falling and the hungry being fed, as if she knew something the Roman Empire didn't. 2,000 years later, they're still trying to make those words safe. They can't.